We are live now.
Ladies and gentlemen, so we are on the 5th evening. I mean, just for the sake of it, we say 5th day, but it's actually the 5th evening of a 75 evenings series that focuses on various aspects of media, communication, its education, its research, and the future trends. Just like the last 4 evenings that we had, we will have a global expert today, we'll have an Indian stalwart, we'll have a young book writer, we'll have a researcher, and we will also be honoring someone with a stellar contribution to media and communication education. But before that, the good news is that this is the last minute that you will see a male face on the screen. For the next 90 minutes, it will be only women, and women all along. And so nice. And not just women from India, for sure, but also women from outside India. Stalwarts in their own right, scholars in their own right. And this evening will be led by a scholar, the leader of today, who is Professor Meha Jaiswal. I have the pleasure of introducing Meha in few words. We have been colleagues, so I can call her by first name. She is the Associate Dean of the School of Contemporary Media, which operates from Delhi and Mumbai, of Pearl Academy. Very interestingly, she has more than 2 decades of experience in media and fashion industry, working first as a journalist with Dalal Street Journal, very well-known publication from the stock market, on the stock market, then joining the International Wool Secretariat, where I think that was the first interaction with the fashion industry, and also working for Confederation of Indian Industries in Delhi for quite some time before coming into academics with Pearl Academy, and has been the strongest pillar of Pearl, both with respect to fashion communication and media education in general. She's a net qualified scholar, trained from London College of Fashion, UK in advanced fashion journalism, and she has a postgraduate certification in higher education from Nottingham Trent University. We have the pleasure of having Professor Meha Jaiswal, working committee member of Global Media Education Council, to lead the day, and she is the person responsible for bringing in these fabulous women panelists whom you will be hearing and listening to in a few minutes from now. Over to you, Meha, and we are looking forward to 90 minutes of intense discussion, learning, and maybe with time permitting, a few interactions, questions also from the chat box. Over to you,
sure.
Madam.
Thank you
Meha
so much,
Jaiswal.
Professor. Thank you so much, Professor Ujjwal. It is indeed a pleasure to moderate the session today, and we were looking forward to this. This is an all-women's panel today that we have. Thank you so much to all the guests for accepting the invitation. And all the guests have been like really busy days. They've had absolutely busy days. I know about Jaishree ma'am. I know about Mamta ma'am. Both of them have had like full days packed of seminars and webinars. So, but thank you so much for joining. Let me just share a quick agenda, what is there for today. We will commence this. Our session chair for today is Dr. Jetwani, Dr. Jaishree Jetwani, and she's a senior ICASSR research fellow, a former professor and program director for IIMC. And thank you so much. She's the session chair. If you can remove this screen for now. Then we have our chief guest, Dr. Mamarani Agarwal. She will join us any moment. She is right now at a low network range. She is called up. She will join us any moment. She is advisor 1 for AICTE and former additional secretary for AIU and UGC. Thereafter, in her presence and in presence of our esteemed session chair, we will have Mahabanu Modi Kotwal being felicitated today, and we will talk more about her when we reach that part of the session. Later on, we have our young author, Mahima Hasija, And thank you so much to GMEC for giving this platform to launch her book. Thank you so much for that. And then we will have our keynote address that is by Dr. Jane Ledberry, who is international lead for Manchester Metropolitan University. And now she is a fashion consultant. So friends, students, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite our chairperson today, Dr. Jaiswal, Senior ICSSR Research Fellow, and ma'am has been with IIMC for more than 2 decades, and she has been in the industry for academics and industry experience of 4 decades. She has headed several projects, written several books, and on advertising, public relations, corporate communications. She's headed several projects related to UNESCO and many research projects that ma'am has spearheaded. We would love to hear from her some of the outputs that she has researched with all of us today. Ma'am, thank you so much. Her session will actually set the context for today, which is going to be on gender divide in media industry. Jaiswal ma'am, over to you. Ma'am, we can't hear you. Ma'am, I think you're on mute.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Give me a second.
You are now audible, perfectly audible and visible.
Yes, yes. Just give me a second. Just give me a second.
Sure.
No problem.
You are perfectly audible and visible. You can speak.
No, but I have an issue with the screen. Just a moment. Give me a second.
We can
I'm back,
and see you.
but I'm back to my, just give me a second. I'm back to my.
Are you having a presentation?
No, I don't have a presentation. I just have some points.
Oh. Nevertheless, for
just a moment.
I'm just.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, you're good. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So good evening, all of you, and a huge appreciation to Team GMEC. It was such a great event manager. I've seen you in the past, and thanks Meha Jaiswal for inviting me to this session and the opportunity given to me to share my thoughts on the issue, especially when it's contextualized around the 75 years of independence. My work on gender and media is little over about 5 years, and I like to believe there's so much more to research and continue to work on. Coming to the subject of my discourse, gender divide in media, believe you me, when Meha sent me this subject, when I started putting down my points, I put a great gender divide. We all know, and the nomenclature says it all. You look at the state of women around, especially media. We live in a very unequal world where binary gender constructions and dualistic approaches are a fact of life. If the world is unequal for men and women per se, it is doubly so in the world of media, as media forms opinions, convictions, volitions in a very seamless manner without most of us noticing it even. We end up thinking, behaving, expecting from our relationships as tutored by the media narrative. Many gender experts believe that women are often treated at home and workplaces as they're stereotyped and portrayed in popular culture and news discourse. If you look at the early studies, especially when the feminist movement started in the 1960s, media implicated discrimination, trivialization, and condemnation of women in its contents. The mediated invisibility is the result of non-representation of women's points of views or perspectives on the world. When women are visible in media content, the manner of the representation reflects the biases, assumptions of those who define the public and therefore the media agenda. However, Much has changed in the last, I would say, 30, 40 years. But when you dive deep, not really. In fact, when I was doing my research in the last 3-4 years, especially between 17 and 19, I had to look at huge, reams of papers and looking at various studies, and I found the last 50 years, many, associations, women associations, many international journalistic associations, in the Women Commission of India, they had commissioned reports, commissioned research studies, and from 70s to 2021, nothing much has changed on the state of women, especially in the media. As a matter of fact, since we all come from the media institutes and universities, more women, young women, join media schools than men do. I recall in the 90s and even the new millennium, from the 21st century, I recall once there was only one gentleman, one boy in the class of almost 40, the rest were girls. So where do all these women go away? When you look at the demographics of the Indian media industry, just about 25% women work in media industry. So where are those, who join the colleges? So day to day, I would say, I don't know what kind of challenges they face, but sexual harassment at workplace, which may include unsolicited comments, compliments, male gaze, misogyny, embarrassing jokes with sexual undercurrents cracked in front of women are commonplace, that even my current research, which I'm doing on the state of the news media industry, reflected. And when you look at the Me Too movement, which surfaced in 1918, tells in no uncertain terms that there's more than meets the eye. The onus in the courts also rests with the women to prove that they were abused. A seminal study of the South Asian countries conducted in 1719, of which I was a very important part, suggests that wages and choice of beats is an area of general disparity in news media in this part of the world. Except for Nepal and Bangladesh, we find the general number of women in the workforce does not go beyond 15 to 20%. And I think in Pakistan, it's just about 3% women who work in the news media industry. Women journalists who especially write on politics, corporate affairs, or cover critical beats face the worst online trolling, sexual harassment, and hate mongering, while the concerned ministries and women commissions fail to take a suo motu cognizance. Those who have complained to social media operators and cyber cells get indifferent response. The Braveheart women journalists are a diminishing tribe that we need to encourage and support. Media that could have been a catalyst in mainstreaming gender, unfortunately, has become an instrument of cross-commercialization, voyeurism, and misogyny, putting women at a great disadvantage. Media does not only reinforce stereotypes, it has also been creating new ones. Women in media houses fight for wage equity, choice of beats, gender-based violence, as almost all studies in the last 50 years or so point out. The current research which I'm doing, and though it is basically wages and related issues in the news media industry, but since I have a new interest in the gender issues, so I devoted a lot of time in talking to very senior women journalists, very young journalists, and also those who were journalists but left their jobs to join academics or elsewhere. So one found that, especially when there's a crisis, there are two kinds of crisis women might face. One is that when there's a job cut, when the pink slips are to be given, is the women who get the X. You've seen in the COVID times, many men lost their jobs, but women were more in number. The other very unfortunate fact is that what the women said, and our research also tells, not only in this part of the country, in this part of the world, but elsewhere, they say we lost women to the womb. It means that the moment women go on a maternity leave, very few are able to come back. Despite laws in place, despite policies in place, it doesn't really happen. And one of the research studies, which was commissioned by the National Commission for Women almost 10, 15 years ago, also reflected that, which is very unfortunate, and women must take a note of that, that women did not even know much about the policies and laws which are women-centric. If you see the last 75 years, the government has made many laws. There are women commissions in every state, at the center. But in case you do not know that this is the grievance redressal mechanism, or if this is the law which can support you, there's little anyone can help you. So you become part of the problem. So how do we address it? There's a lot of debate and heat around the issue, but despite the laws in place, policies in place, why things are not moving and not moving the direction we would like to. Activists and academics feel that mainstreaming gender in the discourse could be the way out. So there's a lot one can talk about in the next 10, 15 minutes that I have. But I thought, let me just talk about 3 issues which I feel could change it could be a game changer. And I'm so happy that the current discourse which I'm sharing, which I'm talking about, most of the target audience, I believe, are the media educators. And I was very happy to see the clip which you show in the beginning. A lot of young academics. I must thank you, Professor Chaudhary, Professor Suresh, and the rest of you who have given opportunity among these 75 days to a lot of young women. And I'm sure the day women decide, things can change. So my first issue or the first suggestion is mainstreaming gender in the course curricula. For the last research which I did in 17-19, we have 300 universities and institutes of higher learning which have schools of media and mass communication. And we did a random sampling. I took about a 20% sample out of 300 universities media school curricula. And we found that less than 10% have anything to do with gender per se. And whereas there's some gender module, I don't know how seriously it is undertaken. So it's high time that in the media school, journalism school, we include a module or a paper on gender. And generally the excuse given is that, but we do not have the faculty. Now, when you look at the demographics of an average university, if you look at the process and structures of our average university, they generally have a department of sociology or women study department. And interestingly, if you see, when you look at the research conducted, especially for the commercial space in the media, advertising and entertainment, etc., it is not the industry, the advertising industry or the entertainment industry, which does any seminal work. It is the School of Sociology or Women's Studies who have done some seminal work. So I believe, I have every reason to believe that in case we draw our faculty from the sociology schools and the schools of women's studies, they can, give wonderful programs in media schools. And wherever we do not have a sociology or women, studies school, one can even think of doing a 1 week long program, which could be online. It could be a certificate course. But if we do not initiate our young minds into understanding gender discourse, what do we expect of them? They are born in a certain manner, boys and girls, differently treated at home. When they go to school, you find there's a bullying of the girls, and then they go to college. Again, the same thing continues when they go to the corporate sector, and media is part of the corporate sector or any institution. The behavior does not change. So we do not sensitize them. And it really pains me that we are talking about the issue after 75 years. And when the gender discussion or the feminist movement started in the 60s, everybody made a fun of it. They thought these are women who are just good for nothing. They're just rattling about things. But imagine, you have to give a lot of credit to those women who came on the streets and said in no uncertain terms that media was responsible for giving a certain stereotype and objectionable portrayal of women. And they especially had problem with the commercial space, especially advertising, and they insisted that there should be systematic studies of the content to see how they are treating women. And all said and done, their 20-25 years of work resulted in what? Some universities in America just to shut them up probably, started in 2 universities, schools of women's studies, which then became gender studies schools. And lo and behold, in the last maybe 50 years or 40 years, almost every university, everywhere, every country has schools of gender studies or women's studies. So whatever one does, you have that, a reaction to that. So all those young women who work in various universities, please take it upon yourself, and also evolve in, why only women, even men, and start a gender studies course in your course curricula. Some have done it. If I'm saying 10% have done it, let it be 100%, and you would find it will bring about a change. The other point which I like to underscore is the addressing the law. A lot has changed in the world of media. Most of the changes have been technology driven. The Indecent Portrayal of Women Prohibition Act 1986 has been placed for amendment, especially in view of the changes brought by the emergence of social media space, computer manipulation of visuals. But it has lapsed twice in the UPA government, in the NDA government. Is the third parliament, which is on, it's almost halfway out. But I only hope and believe that the concerned ministry, which is the Women and Child Development Ministry, pushes it. The way the parliament discussions go on, the kind of, discussions, narrative discourse goes on, I don't think this bill, the amendment of this act, is on the top of the mind agenda of the government per se or the lawmakers. So the media must start writing about it. It's so important that this bill, this act must be changed. And I hope and believe that the concerned ministry, WCD, pushes for amendment in the current parliament tenure. The third issue which is on my mind is the new labor codes. Those of you who are journalism teachers, scholars know that, after independence, the journalists fought, many valiant, fights to get decent wages and decent working conditions. And 2 acts were passed to support them to, their wages and their living conditions and the state of their working. But the last this parliament itself, in 2019 and on 20, a number of bills, I think almost 3 dozen bills or 3 dozen acts have been put together, some subsumed into 4 new labor laws. And in those labor laws, these 2 acts which supported the journalists in no less measure have also been subsumed. And surprisingly, when I did a national webinar to discuss and thresh out, to look at the implication of these new labor codes on the news media industry, most of them said that they did not even know that their acts were being subsumed. Now, once a law has been made, it's very difficult to retrieve it back. Now, these 4 codes are waiting for operationalization. Their guidelines have been made, their rules have been made. And when for a tripartite, meeting, when the concerned Minister of Labor asked the various trade unions, professional associations to come and discuss about it, every trade union in the country except one have rejected. Most of the professional organizations from media, especially journalism, have rejected. They want point by point, clause by clause discussion before this can be approved. But thanks or no thanks to COVID, these were supposed to be implemented by April 2021, the current year. But since some of these states, which are the industrial states, have not sent their input, it's just waiting. But very soon these will be implemented. So what does it really mean? The journalists who are there are about, as we know, more than 1 lakh newspapers and publications. There are 400 channels, news channels. Then you have the huge digital media landscape. One good thing has happened, and the rest we have to see how it shapes out. The good thing is that until now, only journalists working in the press media were seen or were known as working journalists. But with these labor codes, the people who work in television medium, radio, and digital media have also been defined as working journalists. Another good thing which has happened is that the concerned court says there'll be a complete gender equity in terms of appointments. So the gender divide at least has been spoken about, but the courts are silent on the promotions, the training, the special needs the women have, the gender-based violence at workplace and other things. So let's see when the rules and these guidelines are shared with us. But the other thing, the bad thing which has happened is that there are about 50 crore people, the workforce in India, in both organized and unorganized sector. Now, news media has also been put along with them. Now, imagine the people who work in news media. I would put them in an intellectual, capacity or intellectual side. They cannot be, bracketed with people in unorganized sector. It's a very, very kind of a specialized function, profession. But then you need a nuanced approach dealing with them in terms of their jobs, in terms of their wage boards. Now, with these two bills getting subsumed, the wage boards, which were looking after their wage interests, have also been gone with a thin air. We only hope and believe that the rules and the guidelines have suggested some kind of a commission or a wage board which will look after the interests of the journalists. We really do not know, but one has to be cross-fingered to see that it augurs well for the journalist community, including women. So therefore, lastly, gender mainstreaming should ideally address the following, to my mind: course curricula, the laws, policies promising equal rights, the operationalization of these in the media entities by putting more women in substantive positions, fair evaluation criteria, create a culture of accountability, bring in robust grievance mechanism, a systematic training to combat biases by involving the academia, online learning on POSH, that is, on sexual harassment, working on minimum gender sensitivity norms in the media narrative, especially entertainment and advertising, by looping in the corporate, sector, the entertainment industry, and an industry, and not just government mechanism to give some guidelines or some rules, because in case the industry can do it on themselves, self-regulation, I think is much better. But I believe that a concerted effort and a constant pushing, despite all odds, hopefully will bring about the change to bring a just and equitable society. As I said, that 50 years and hundreds or thousands of research studies make you feel very morbid. When you come for a discourse in one of the webinars like this, one is very enthused talking about the research. But the more research you do, the more morbid you feel about it. And sensitization for 75 years, I think it's enough time. Now is the time we must, pull up our socks and work. And since I'm addressing the assembly of the wise, all the people who are scholars, who are media academics, who are media practitioners, if you do not do, nobody else is going to do for you. So with these few words, I'll rest my discourse. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, thank you so much. These are some startling revelations, ma'am. So many things that we have not even, we become part of the problem when we do not know. Lack of awareness is another big problem that we have in all of us. I mean, I will include myself also in this. But many things that I am not aware about what women journalists, could actually ask for and negotiate and should be aware about. So, ma'am, thank you so much. And I would like to please say again one thing, that on behalf of students and our entire team of School of Media at Pearl, I would like to volunteer along with students. If there is any forthcoming research that you will undertake, please involve us and we would like to contribute to it, ma'am. We can be your hands and legs. I mean, if we cannot, it will be good for us to work under your leadership.
Very pleased.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And on behalf of our session chair, Dr. Jaiswal, I would like to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Mamarani Agarwal. She joined us in between. She was in a low network area. Thank you so much, Mamta ma'am. I have the honor of inviting her as the chief guest. She is advisor 1 for AICTE. She is the one who's responsible for the faculty development that AICTE conducts all over India. Mamta ma'am was former joint secretary for UGC, and she started her career with the first batch of Indian Air Force FC officers. Mamta ma'am, thank you so much for joining us and taking out this time for us. Over to you, ma'am. So we have the honor of that.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good
ma'am.
evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, little feeble, but we can hear.
Okay, I'm still in my car and going back after a very, very hectic day and a very hectic week. But since, I committed to Meha ji and commitment was so very important, so I didn't say no. Dr. Jaishree Jetwahane, chairperson of the session, Miss Mahabanu Modi, Dr. Jane Ledberry, Dean Manchester Metropolitan University, and my dear Meha Jaiswal, who has always been available. It is very difficult for me to address the gathering today because I am in my car with no bandwidth. However, with my limited availability of resources, I shall try to do my best. For the reason of having a very low bandwidth, do you mind me if I switch off my camera and continue with my audio?
Sure, ma'am, please. Thank you so much for joining. I know that you had a very hectic week and day. Thank you so much for joining. Please switch off your video and we can hear you.
Okay. I just now heard the previous very eloquent and very passionate speaker, Dr. Jaishree, and how she has explained the whole thing in a very, very clear, concise, and impressionable manner. See, gender equality. Gender equality is the fifth goal of sustainable development goals laid out by the United Nations. However, according to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report 2020, India ranks 112 out of 153 countries in the Global Gender Gap Index. Thus, it is imperative to address the issue of gender inequality in India through affirmative policies aimed at empowering women. And in my personal opinion, it is no longer, gender equality is no longer only a fundamental human right. It is a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. As Liz Kingo, CEO, UN Global Gender Compact, rightly puts it, gender equality is not an evolutionary process. We have to spark a gender equality revolution. And again, I'm reminded of one very, very powerful words of Margaret Thatcher, that the famous quote when Europe's first woman prime minister spoke about, if you want something said, something done, ask a woman. This reality is, and she said it 30 years back in the context of politics. But it is almost true even today. Maybe one shift has certainly happened, that today we have progressed and have some strong women in our politics as well. Women's equal participation and leadership in political and life are essential. By 2030, sustainability goals expect us to achieve. Women are underrepresented at all levels of decision making worldwide, and achieving gender parity in political life is a far off dream. As of September 2021, there are only 26 women serving as heads of states and or government in 24 countries out of 193 UN countries. At the current rate, my friends, it is very sad to note that gender equality in the highest positions of power will not be reached for another 130 years. It is sad, truly sad. America, which is one of the most powerful and second largest democracies in the world, has never had a woman president in its 245 years old history. Excuse me. It has had 46 presidents till date and not a single woman. Kamala Harris as the vice president is indeed a huge achievement for Americans, I should say. Another good thing is that it has about 46% of women in its cabinet. Now, look, let's just come back to our country and look inward at India. We have been that way, a way ahead. We had a very strong woman prime minister in Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and we have also had a woman president, not a minister or one president. If we really look closely and deeply into women in cabinet, it is roughly close to 15%. Our honorable prime minister has inducted about 11 women ministers in his cabinet and the recent reshuffle. The question is, why do we continue to have such underrepresentation? And something which, be very, very interesting for you to note and worldwide, some of the most commonly held portfolios by women ministers are family, children, youth, elderly, disabled, social affairs, environmental, natural resources, energy, employment, labor, vocational training, women affairs, gender parity, or gender equality. So, these are not considered some of the core domains or the core areas where only women should be working in. In fact, it has been a good change. It has been a very welcome change that we have had women two very, very important portfolios, that is defense as well as finance, which are Nirmala Sitaramanji held two portfolios. These numbers are nothing. And when, whatever numbers I spoke about, but the representation of what we see around in all corporates, in all private offices. And I'm sure how many women in leadership role do you have in Global Media Educators Council? I'm still not very sure about it. What I now want to say is, one of the conferences which I attended and where I was made to believe, and I'm sure all of you as it is know it, that when we talk about sex and when we talk about biologically a person being a male or female, it is a natural happening, but gender is always created. And as Dr. Jaiswal just now said it, role in women objects of pleasure. And the way acted in advertisement from the clothing to the mannerism, the kind is shown that when a lady is taken home for marriage and when it is other way around. So I think media or anything you look around, even all those Bonds movies, it's these all have been objectifying women at every level possible. Now, who is responsible if there are not enough women in leadership roles? Who is responsible if we have not been doing it? So I think it is perception, it is our attitudinal attributes, it is our psychological leanings, it is what is precisely the way, the mindset we have, that women and men are made, built differently and have different attributes to perform different jobs. It is our stereotypes, it is our prejudices, it is our way of thinking, our societal perception that is defining. What I feel is that look at these things much deeper. I can talk about few of my very personal experiences. I am from the first batch of lady pilot officers of Indian Air Force. When we joined Indian Air Force, everywhere it was a great appreciation, admiration. Our photos were published on the first page of Hindustan Times, Times of India, all leading newspapers. we were interviewed by the channels. And when we really go to the field, we realize there were no separate toilets for women. There were no places for us to make change, formal uniform to the clothes or other way around. There was a common breakfast room where you would have all nude collages of women. And when in the station, in whole of, I mean, no sensitization, no awareness, nothing was done by the organization, by the air headquarters, or by the forces to actually imbibe, embrace, and integrate women. So just by policy, just by making a law, just by making a policy, things do not change. So we actually require that governance. We actually require those women who can actually be party to decision making, framing those policies. And then, I always, in all my talks, whenever I talk about women, I always tell, if we decide that we all women will support each other, I think half the battle is won. Reason being that if we even take our availability, that we are 48% of our demographic dividend, then even if we receive 48% support, I think half the battle is won, whether we have to go to politics or we have to go to higher political, corporate, or governmental roles. Now the question is that, we as women, are these attitudes we aware of, that sex is biological and gender is created? Have we ever taught our boys and girls in the same manner? Have we actually brought them up in a manner that they can embrace strong women, that they can actually encourage and, can celebrate their strong women? Each time, just look around, ask yourself deeper question. When your daughter comes back home at 10, you are all the times, asking her, where have you been? Why did you not inform? Why did you not call up? With whom were you? But we do not ask the same question to our boys. If we do not do that, even without trying to be showing any disparity, it is evident to our children that we have different standards for boys and different standard for girls. So I think if we as women ensure that we would support each other, if we as women ensure that we will be bringing up our boys and girls in the same manner, who can embrace, who can celebrate their women, their achievements, I think half the battle is won. Because it's not about money, it's not about that women are not going because of economic disparity. It may be a reason, it is definitely a reason, but not the only reason. I have come across extremely wealthy women giving up, aborting their daughters in family pressure. I have come across numerous extremely wealthy women who will marry off their daughters at 19 so that she does not commit a mistake of being in love with another caste boy. I have I have personally witnessed in my village, in and surrounding vicinities, where honor killing is happening with full, complete consent of our women. Many of the domestic violences are there because we as mother-in-laws, we as daughter-in-laws, we support that. So empowerment is what you want to do that. I am not a person who would say that get into politics because you have to be empowering. Do what you want, lead a life on your own terms and conditions, with equality, with access. But how do you do that? You need to know your rights. You need to change the perception. You need to break all those stereotypes, prejudices. It is a slow process. It is an evolutionary process. Though we really need to make a monumental revolution rather than an evolutionary process. But I think we need to start this change at every possible level. I was very impressed when Dr. Jetmalani said we need to do studies, we need to carry out papers, we need to tell women what their rights are. I'll just give one very small example. on this year on 8th of March, I was addressing the university students in a very, very big gathering. And one of the students, she got up and said, we are very happy in this university. And this is the best university because they have given us the freedom that we can wear skirts and jeans. And I was so surprised. I told them it is not an obligation. It is your body. It is your right. And I think media is the eyes and ears of all of us. So each one of you, all the people who are in media, just write a small blogs, write a small write up on your Facebook page, write a small nice message on WhatsApp, get it circulated among all the people. Do your bit, make women aware of that their body, their clothing, their way of living, their belief system, their choices, it is their right. It is not an obligation which their family, their university, their workplace is doing on that. On academic front, I think we have done quite a lot. We have made everywhere, which she was talking about, that Supreme Court's policy where it says prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace. But, it does not really curtail things, because again, you will find that there are men and there are women who are not aware of the whole process. They half the time the fault is found with women. And I want to tell you, women, your honor is not based in your set of breasts, in your vagina. Your honor is in the way you think about it. I think each one of us have a strong responsibility, have a very serious responsibility, a committed responsibility to tell everybody what are their right, how can they lead a life, how can they empower themselves and choose to be wherever they want. They want to be housewives, feel free. They want to be part of politics, by all means. They want to be corporate leaders, by all means. So, I think I have spoken because this is something very close to my heart. So what do I want to tell you is, be the change you want to see in the world. So be the change, be the agent of change. Tell your girls, brother, that, I am equal, my children are equal, my mates are equal, and everybody is equal. Reach out to women, reach out to each one of them, do your small bit to ensure that you bring out the change. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Ma'am, thank you so much. It was such a delight listening to you. I mean, listening to you. And trust me, today the panel is such, each one of you has touched my life in some way or the other. And I have learned so many things from the 5 of you who are here. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am. And it's our honor now to felicitate Mahabano Modi Kotwalji. I will invite Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary to do the honors. But let me introduce Mahabanoji here. She's here with us. She's an award-winning, nationally and internationally acclaimed actor, producer, director. She is the one who has brought a play, Vagina Monologues, to India. She was also part of several plays here. She acted, she produced, and also part of several Bollywood and Hollywood films. Ma'am, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you, Professor Ujjwal Chaudhary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Meha. As the Secretary of the Global Media Education Council, I'm really delighted today to honor someone who has been a name in the world of creative expressions, theater, actor, director, as has been already told by Meha. I remember to have watched Vagina Monologues 2 times, each time with several of my colleagues and friends, both men and women, and more of them women, in groups. And it was such an impact that it had on all of us. The way you covered the life of a lady from birth to death, even how distinctions and differences are there in the society before birth of a woman, of a lady, and after death, even then, and all phases in between. Fabulous work, ma'am. Not just that, you have a body of work, and we are indeed delighted. It's our honor. We are no one to award you. We are just expressing our gratitude for all the work that you have been doing for us, for the society around, to create awareness in a very entertaining, sometimes even humorous way, but making your point so strong. Can we have the little video that is there to confer the award? Extremely sorry for the audio glitch that happened just now, but thank you for your presence, and we are eagerly waiting for your address. The scroll and books that we'd like to present to you would come later on courier. Thank you very much for your presence. Over to you, and we are very eager to listen to you for the next discourse. Over to you, madam.
Thank you very much. I'm truly humbled and frankly really embarrassed, at this honor that you have given me. You see, my work started out because all around me, and I have a few questions later on that I can ask Mamta Rani, right? May I do that later on? Because I do feel that while we have progressed to some extent, I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think under the present political situation, it is very difficult for women to ever come out in the open. And why women ask their daughters, when are you coming home? It's because the men out there are ready to abuse them. They don't ask the sons because there is no girl waiting out there to rape the son or to inflict any kind of violence on him. At least I don't think there are. I've not met anyone like that. My work started out with the Vagina Monologues first. Before that, I had done many plays, and somehow or the other, they were always women-centric. They were women-centric, and somehow surreally, they were monologues. The first play I remember that I did was I had one of the monologues about a woman who lived during the Great American Depression. And through the stories of women, every woman has so many stories within herself, and not only within herself, but from every angle. The husband has a different idea about her, has a story about her. The mother-in-law might have, the children have a totally different story. She has her own story. So there are myriads of stories. And I think theater is one of the most fabulous mediums through which these stories can be told and through which awareness can be brought about. The sad thing is that in India, we have no sexual education for children. None at all. Even in the elite schools in Bombay, I have seen that children, the parents actually object even to the word sex being used. So sex education as a syllabus is totally out of the question. I have only one school where I did, who requested us to do the entire Vagina Monologues as a part of their program for the 10th and 11th and 12th standard children. And you will be surprised, we did it separately for the boys and girls because we didn't want unnecessary, embarrassment or tittering. I didn't know the children at all. And we did the whole, I told the principal that we are not going to just show the nice parts, the funny parts. There's a lot of pain in these monologues. So we have to do it totally because that is what Eve Ensler, the lady who wrote the Vagina Monologues expects of us. We are not allowed to change a word of the script. After we showed the play, we performed the play, for the next 2 days, my son and I, Kaisar, we did 2 days of intensive workshops on the play with the children. And what came out of those? I learned so much more than I think probably the children learned, you know. I mean, children from good families coming and saying that parents are not interested in that they are busy with their lives. Girls getting up and saying that, you know, my brother, and these are in privileged societies, that my brother gets better treatment if there's a trip to be taken, and in case it's a very expensive trip, then my brother can go, but I can't go. So these things, you know, and they didn't know anything about sex. First of all, I must tell you that the word vagina, according to Indians, is a dirty word. And not just according to Indians, but even in some parts of America, like in 2019, I performed the Vagina Monologues. In America, I directed 11 American women, and they were all from, you know, one was a district attorney, one was a decorator. They were all non-actors. And I said, will we be allowed to perform properly? And you won't believe it. 90-year-old, 80-year-old women who were suppressed, repressed, who could not say the word, came to this show and actually shouted out the word with me. You know, at the beginning, I make them say the word softly and a little louder, and then ultimately I make them shout it out. So even over there was a lot of, repression. But over here, it is terrible. You know, we never want to use the word vagina. We don't understand, first of all, that it is the biological name of a part of the body of over half this world's population. And whether you like it or not, we must all remember that every single one of us has spent the first few months of our lives in very close proximity to one. So what's to be ashamed? I mean, my grandsons, who were 3 and 4 at that time, and are now 14 and 15, they never use the word choo-choo, pee-pee, shoo-shoo like we do. You know, we tell our children, we actually shame these body parts, which I think is a horrible thing to do. In India, we sell everything through sex. If you're buying a car, there's a lovely woman standing there with a slit up to her thigh, a dress with a slit up to her thigh, selling the car. If you're buying a vacuum cleaner, there's a woman in shorts mowing, using the vacuum cleaner. But we will not sit down with our children and have a good, strong, reasonable, rational discussion on sex with them. And I think that is where the trouble lies. We just won't do it. And I don't see them doing it, because if the schools don't have it, and I always tell the principals of the schools I work with that you have workshops with children, the first thing you need to do is you must have workshops with the parents. You must, and you must. Otherwise, there is no progress ever going to be. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's just not kid ourselves about that. The one thing the Vagina Monologues also did was, you know, we translated it into Hindi. Everyone told me, why don't you do it in Hindi? You'll have a larger audience. So we did. We paid a lot for it. We had a fabulous translator. I mean, she really took the whole piece and just wove magic with it. However, when it came time to perform, we had very small audiences. It was the mindset. In fact, at one stage, I'm not ashamed to announce that we performed to only 6 people. I took a big financial drubbing in that for that, but we do perform it now, you know, for institutions that want the Hindi one, or for at Prithvi Theatre, you know, where we do get house full for the Hindi. But we can't do it anywhere else because nobody comes over there. I think people feel, what will they say in Hindi, you know? What are the words they're going to? And that is because they lack knowledge about the Hindi language. They don't know that in Hindi also there are respectable words. It's not always the word chut or kant that people use. There is yoni. There are so many respectable words. And actually the yoni is worshipped in Hinduism. That's what I'm told. I'm sorry if anyone is going to disagree. This is my opinion, my knowledge of it. Anyway, so what we did was we had it translated. And then because it was not doing well commercially, we decided we would take it to the bastis. The bastis, for those who are not aware, in India, are the slums in Bombay, at the Dharavi slums, which is the largest slum in Southeast Asia. We did 11 shows for them. We got a grant. We put in some of our own money and we performed these. And it was like an evening out, an afternoon out for those women. Everything was totally free. Of course, we had to pay our artists, our lighting man, the sound man, the theater. We had to do that. But somehow we managed with 2 grants. We gave money of our own, and then we had money from another NGO. So we performed those. And after each performance, we would ask the women, and believe me, they were so sophisticated in their thinking, much more than what the privileged classes were, because in the privileged classes, I would notice a little titter or at the wrong time, sometimes when you're nervous, when you're embarrassed, you tend to giggle. But these women, they were with the play every line. They laughed when they had to, they cried when they had to, they clapped when they had to. And after the show, we would ask them their reactions, and they would be very open about it, very, very open. And some of them even allowed us to, with their permission, to videograph their stories. And I'm hoping at some stage that some multinational will give us some money to make a film out of those, because it is very important to spread these stories even to other cities and other languages. We had somebody translated into Marathi. I have no idea about that. I was told to talk about what happens, when you translate into other languages. I have no idea about I'm right now in the middle of translating it into Gujarati. Whether we will be allowed in Gujarat, I have no idea. I'm hoping we will. I've not started rehearsals. The finishing touches are still to be put. Now I'll come to the fact that, somebody always asks me, how does it feel to be called a feminist? And I say, I've been called worse words than that. After all, what is a feminist? I think people really don't understand the radical notion. Feminism is the radical notion that women are humans. And now, since the last few years, when we talk about gender disparity and gender inequality, I've started thinking, just a few months ago, I did a webinar on gender inequality. And on doing research, I found that there are 54 genders minimum. And some researchers felt that there were even 64 genders. And so when you include, don't just talk about women. Feminism is all genders. Everyone is equal. Everyone is a human being. Everyone has the same rights, whether he's LGBTQ, whatever, or any one of those 54 or 64 genders. You have to treat everybody equally. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was whether in theatre there is any differentiation in pay scales for men and women. Frankly, we in theatre hardly get paid anything. So there's no question of that at all. At least in our group, there isn't. It's a very small amount that people take, the actors take. Most of our actors are actors who believe in the cause. And it's only when we go outstation to perform anything that we get, some, which we use then to fund our Make a Difference Foundation. And even though we've had hardly any work just now, still in 2021, January and March, we did 8 shows of the Vagina Monologues. The first shows in January were a total disaster. Nobody came. I mean, people came, but it was a disaster. The rest of the shows in March were houseful, or however many were allowed. So that was okay. But the money problem is such because there is no government incentive for theatre. A country like Israel has 3,000 performances every year. You can stand under a tree and perform. You just have to tell the Ministry of Culture or whatever. I don't even know who is the Minister of Culture, or they have absolutely no interaction with us. We've not had it, at least. And in Israel, everybody, if you want to see plays, you get a booklet and you mark out the plays that you want to see. So you get a booklet subsidized. You don't pay for the entire ticket. Now that is now in India, where is that? Not at all, In fact, when we got Jane Fonda and Marissa Tomei and Eve Ensler to come here and perform with us, we raised lakhs of rupees for shelters for battered and abused women, something that we have continued to do till to date. At that time, I was told that the government expected me to pay 25% of each ticket sold before I sold the ticket, because there were foreigners coming here to perform. Then I told them that no, these people are not going to perform. They will only speak on the stage. And then I had to tell them that this is for charity. We are raising so many lakhs. Our major beneficiary was Sneha in Dharavi, with whom we have worked a lot, and they do superb work. So at that time, then they sort of let go the 24% or 26%, whatever it was. So there is absolutely no encouragement from government, none at all, at least not for us. Maybe for regional theatre there is, I have no idea. And throughout the play, now we will enter the 20th year next year of the Vagina Monologues. And at that time, we intend to have a big celebration, maybe invite events over here and and again collect funds to distribute. Our fund is only for women because that is our main target. And that is how we really, theatre is really not a paying profession. If you want to do theatre, you must have plan B. So what we all do is we do little ads here, we do a little role there. And even over there, in Bollywood, there is a lot of differentiation. I don't believe in that. I go, I listen to the director, I ask him what is the role. I quote him my fee. If I get it, I do it. If I don't, I tell him to. So in Bollywood, there is a lot of difference, but I do feel that people must get a mindset change. Somebody must go out there and tell people that this is not the way you must make your daughters and your sons lead their lives. That sex is not a dirty thing. It is not. It is the most pleasurable thing, but with it comes a lot of responsibility. And you have to explain that to them. Other countries are doing it, and other countries that are so free with their sexual perceptions, they have very low crime rates, very low crime rates. And frankly, the Indian male, first of all, I think one should approach the Indian male mindset. Absolutely. I mean, we have people in high positions in government saying such nonsense. I mean, it really makes my blood boil. But what can you do? How do you approach? So I would like Mamta Rani to tell us, Mamta ji, how do you approach those people? How do you call them up? Can you take them to court? You can't. You'd spend your whole life fighting them. So instead of doing your work, you would be fighting these people. So at the moment, my perception is that India is at a very low scale where women are concerned. Some of us will fight, we will get trolled, we will get abused. That's okay. And another thing that I do feel is that religion has played a very, very major role in gender inequality. I do feel that from within my heart. I myself am irreligious, so I'm not got any this thing with one side or the other, not at all. But I do feel that people should realize that religion, in fact, just the other day, I put up something on a website for the Zoroastrians, and you have no idea how much of illiteracy, how much of non-research, how much of ignorance, and how much of hatred came out of that one post of mine. So I've left that group. So this is what I feel we should do. We should not be afraid. The first thing is we should not be afraid of anybody. Anyone says anything, let us take the right action. And Mamta ji, I really would like you to speak after I do. I've finished my speech as it is. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. But this is my one question to you, that in the present political scenario, do you see India moving ahead for the next 20 or 30 years? I don't. Thank you very much. And thank you for this honor that you have given me. I don't know if I deserve it, but it makes me very happy. Thank you.
Mahabanuji, I am traveling and I'm continuously traveling. So I'm not sure if I was able to hear you completely and fully, because twice I got disconnected because of the signal problem, and I reconnected myself and again joined the meeting. One thing I want to very specifically tell you that, again thinking, I just now heard you saying it, that men in government jobs or say in government hierarchy saying a few things about it. See, in my very clear personal opinion, it's not about men in government or men in private sector or men in corporate or anywhere else, because, like, for example, I would just take you away for a few seconds. When people talk a lot of things about politicians, how they are, I always tell them that, they are representatives of our society. So, the way society is, if there are people who are sophisticated, who have moral values, I'm sure there are politicians who are sophisticated, who have moral values, who speak well, who do not demean women. Because right now I'm talking with a specific to women. Now, if there are politicians who are uncouth, who are absolutely disrespectful, who even something very shameful which happened in our parliament, that the way one of our lady senior parliamentarian was treated. So there are also those men who are representatives of our society. So it is exactly the same, whether you talk about media, or you talk about corporate houses, or you talk about government bodies. I think it is by and large equally the same. Now, I have always told you, it is also a fundamental problem with India that we do not prepare institutional framework for anything. I have personally quoted you that for many years, I had to go use the same toilet which was meant for men. And because in the forces you have an orderly, I will take the orderly with me, make him stand outside just to ensure that there is no man in the toilet. And there were times when, at night when there was no orderly, and, I entered the toilet and realized that there was a man with an open jib. So I think one is, as the speaker before you and me, as she was speaking, we require an institutional framework. For that, we require inclusion of women while framing policies. And before that, when we say that, include women just by their physical presence, nothing happened. I have seen women sitting absolutely mum in so many meetings,
Yes.
without uttering a word, when they can actually make very, very serious impact. So, so even making them aware of what are their rights, what are their duties, and the work which you are doing, and the way you are explaining sex and sex education is a very welcome step. But I think if each one of us as a lady can really contribute, just look around the way our domestic helps are beaten up, the way, they are extremely low in iron, calcium, even during their pregnancy, the way they keep on having one child after the other, the husband is not working and still will beat her up. So, many a times I believe that, the change starts from me. I mean, it can be very, very small, it can be very slow, it can be very gradual, very incremental. But as I was telling you, it is again a very personal belief that if each one of us starts supporting each other with those little small baby steps, I think a lot can be achieved. And we may require government at macro level, but I think at a much larger level, we may do a lot. Like, when all those women movements happened, and that, for adult franchise, even in the United States, government never supported those movements. Government was never part of that movement. You may be aware of that in certain states of United States, where very, very juvenile girls were raped by some of very influential people. Court even gave a hearing of marrying those girls to those culprits. So I think more than the governmental change at an umbrella level, we require fundamental grassroots level changes, and each change may start with me. That is what I meant to say, if you actually agree with my mindset.
And I also feel that education is the most important thing, because unless the girls are educated, unless they become financially independent, I don't think they can reach anywhere. They must be taught to work, and they must educate themselves, and parents must educate their daughters. As you said rightly, there are rich families which educate the daughters, and by the time the girl is 19, then they want to, marry her off, or whatever it is that they want to do. And it is really sad, but I feel that somewhere on the grassroots level, we should go into the interiors, and we should work, I mean, we all, people like you and me, of course, we look after our house help, and of course we, in our own small way, do things. Like recently during the pandemic, I helped a girl who was living on the street through her college for her fees, for her clothes, for her telephone, because it was all online. Tomorrow I'm taking her shopping for her clothes because she doesn't have clothes to wear to college now. So in that little way we can, but how many can we as individuals help? How many?
Thank you so much. Actually,
Ma'am,
both of
just
you
one
have
line
been,
I would add. Just
yeah.
one line, Mehaji. What I'm saying, Banu ma'am, is that teaching, that education can be structured, formal, school understanding and teaching, and that can be very informal, unstructured, because if you really look at across all surveys, 80% of our education happens from unstructured learning from all our surroundings. So yes, I am there for laws, I am there for formal education, I am there for structured education, I am there for awareness campaigns, I am there for everything. What? Because it is a very Herculean Herculean task, and we would require maybe another century to achieve it fully. But I think we need to make a difference, start making a difference with the world go. I mean, I need to make a difference.
True.
We've got a fund that's called the Make a Difference Foundation. So I guess
Yes, absolutely.
There is paucity of time. I will interrupt here a little. We still have the keynote speaker to go. But thank you so much, Mahabhanuji and Mamtaji and Dr. Jethwani. I mean, it's been just amazing listening to you. I mean, there is so much more to learn and imbibe and do today. And we have a young author here, and on the platform of Global Media Educators Council, in presence of our session chair and our chief guest, Dr. Mamta Rani, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Jane and Mahabhanuji, we will launch her book. Thank you so much. Mahima, over to you. And we have a small, yes, thank you.
Swings of life. Okay.
Swings of life. Yes. Mahima, could you take a minute and talk about your book, please?
Sure.
She's a student still.
First of all, thank you so much, Meha ma'am. And thank you so much, JMEC, for giving me this platform. So I started writing this book when I was in first year of my college without having any idea that I'll be able to write a book one day. So I just started writing some poems and some short articles, short stories. And within 3 years, I was having so much of poems and articles that I thought that I can compile this into a book. So I would give all the credits to my College Pearl Academy, to all my faculty members who helped me with this. And my book, Swings of Life, is basically a compilation of poems and short stories, basically based on social issues like women empowerment, child poverty, and some social issues like these. And that's it. And I would again thank you so much for giving me this platform.
Many congratulations.
Sure. I have the book with me. So this is the book, Swings of Life.
Wow, I like the color.
Thank you.
Very good. Swings of Life.
Thank you so much.
Literally,
Heartiest congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Meha, I must tell you, since there are a lot of students around, my book, The Beauty Paradigm, Gender Discourse in Indian Advertising, had just been published 2 days ago. So, so let the students read and be sensitized about, and we've been very critical about the way the commercial space is used to objectify women. Almost 90% of the ads, Indian ads, have, if not objectionable, portrayal, it is stereotypical in the patriarchal milieu. So I would invite you guys to take a look at the book. Yeah.
Congratulations, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, even I would read your book.
Thank you so much. I'll send you a copy.
Thank you so very much.
I'll send you a copy. Yes.
So, Mahima, would you share at least 4 copies to college so that I can send it across to all the panelists here, so that your signed copy?
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Thank you so much.
Actually, we should buy it because young authors should be promoted.
Okay. Yes.
I never take a free ticket or anything, so we'll buy your.
Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now comes the much awaited keynote speaker, Dr. Jane Ledberry. I have worked with Dr. Jane for last 4 years, and we have worked together on several projects. Dr. Jane Ledberry was former dean for internationalization for Manchester Metropolitan University, and she leads the cause for sustainability. She's done several projects with British Council, with Pearl Academy, with United Nations, and other grants and funds that NGOs for sustainable development. So thank you so much, Dr. Jane Ledberry, for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you. It's been really interesting and such inspiring speakers.
Yes. So, Jane, I think you're joining from your iPad, is it? And you couldn't join from your laptop, right?
That's correct. So with these technical issues, if you wouldn't mind sharing the presentation, Meha.
I will just do that. I will share your presentation. So, Dr. Jane Ledberry is going to address us today. The keynote address is on fashion, gender, and media, the myth and reality. So, just one moment. Give me a moment to share the screen. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
And I'll make it full screen and I'll mute my.
Thank you.
Jane, over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a little bit of a different tangent to some of the speakers we've heard today, but I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between fashion media and the impact that has, particularly on women today. So fashion has long represented women as ideals associated with impact upon poor body image, low self-esteem, and mental and physical ill health. More recently, though, fashion media representation has started to try and embrace diversity with varied ethnicity, skin tone, plus size and older age women, and yet social ideals sadly still predominate. Fashion became a really important part of culture in the 1950s, you can see here on the left. And generally, the Western world was going through many social and cultural changes at the time. Fashion became a way to express both conformity and individual identity. And the hourglass figure was created, tiny little waists. And after the war era, this was very popular, and femininity and voluptuousness was valued. Adverts at the time even suggested that if you could go back one, sorry, Meha, adverts at the time advised women to take weight supplements to try and flesh out their curves. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the 1960s, which swung in totally the opposite way, with the advent of a waif-like young and slender model, and the silhouette became straight and androgynous. Corset-free and embracing less constricting clothes, the slim look was achieved through diet. And interestingly, Weight Watchers was founded in 1963. We can change slide, Meha, thank you. So the 1970s was a party era, the era of the discotheque. Disco girls, they needed flat stomachs and slim hips to wear the new polyester and stretch fabrics, which were far more revealing than materials had been to date. And curves started to come back in during this era. On the right, you can see the 1980s, which saw the advent of Amazonian women. Big hair, wide shoulder pads, power dressing. It provided a totally different silhouette of an inverted triangle, and a fitness movement emerged in the 80s. The ideal at that time was for a fit, toned and tanned body, and the decade actually was one of empowerment for women, but still it provided really difficult beauty standards to achieve. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then we saw in the 1990s We reverted to the era of a waif, and it was a rebellion essentially against the fitness era and super fit women of the 80s. And there was an emergence of a terrible trend for grunge and what was named heroin chic. Size 0 models appeared on the catwalks and in the media, and emaciated models and weight control became really extreme, and anorexia and eating disorders grew amongst the young. Media imagery in this decade included smoking and drug taking to promote a grunge look. Looks became very androgynous and models were pale and gaunt. On the right, we can see that with the new millennium, thankfully, we saw the end of super thin and controversial heroin chic look, and size 0 models were banned from most catwalks. And the decade witnessed the emergence of a more curvy and sexy ideal. Spray tans became popular, and brands such as Victoria's Secret started to promote affordable but sexy lingerie. Celebrities increasingly started to influence aspirations. The next slide, thank you. So this past decade, from 2010, has seen curvier women in the media, but nonetheless, body image and body dysmorphia remain significant problems as women are striving to conform to these changing or shifting ideals of beauty. Celebrity culture and social media increases pressure on women to meet this ideal. And due to this, we've seen an upsurge in the 21st century of plastic surgery in order to attain these unrealistic ideals. It's grown prevalent in our celebrities, and society's become aware of the need to address negative body image and resultant self-esteem. Some positive body image campaigns have emerged and become more prevalent, addressing not only body shape, but the need for greater diversity in our media, with different ages, sizes, skin tones becoming more prevalent in advertising. So this begs the question that we see here: is the media responsible for eating disorders and negative body image in our young people? This shocking image here is from the Nolita No Anorexia campaign, which featured a fashion model photographed by Oliviero Toscani, and it was on billboards outside Milan Fashion Week in 2007. It caused outrage, actually, and it begged the question whether this campaign by Nolita was enlightening or exploitative. But whatever your opinion, this campaign did, however, help to precipitate a ban on 0 size models on the catwalk. So moving on, we look again at the cost of meeting these media ideals. The body dysmorphia, which is defined as attention to undue or perceived flaws, a combination of environmental, psychological, and biological factors. Bullying can create feelings of inadequacy, shame, and fear of ridicule. And it's also attributed to comparison of self to celebrities and others on social media, resulting in increased self-loathing. Moving on to the image you see here. This is another shocking statistic, I feel. In 2018, the Daily Mail tabloid newspaper reported on the rise of back-to-school surgery, with women as young as 15 and 16 seeking procedures such as nose reshaping and breast augmentations. It was reported that as many as 66,000 teenagers had cosmetic plastic surgeries in 2016, including breast augmentation when their breasts do not fully develop until their early 20s. Experts say that numbers will only continue. If we can go back one, Meha, thank you. Thank you. There's an interesting statistic here that I'd just like to highlight. The BBC recently has reported that cosmetic doctors and plastic surgeons from across the world have reported surges in bookings for not only surgical but non-surgical procedures and treatments following the 2020-21 pandemic lockdown. And it's being referred to as the cosmetic surgery Zoom boom. And this is accredited to us looking at ourselves and the time we've spent observing ourselves on screen, seeing our own lockdown faces. Next slide, thank you. We even damage our skin and our health with seeking beauty, which is not really achievable. Skin whitening and bleaching, for example, can have serious impact on health and side effects, which include mercury poisoning, liver and kidney, nerve damage, and has been banned now by several countries. And continually exposure to the sun, we know very well what a high risk this carries. And yet sun tanning, with or without sun creams, remains prevalent amongst Western white populations. No matter what the risk, we still want to have the look we can't really attain. So fashion ideals, I'll leave you to read this, but fashion ideals are no longer simply influenced by film stars and models and pop culture, as they were quite simply in the 1960s through to the 1990s. Celebrity culture and social media and influencers have resulted in pressure on women, which is relentless to conform to current and emerging trends, and has a significant impact on the young, striving for unrealistic ideals with imagery that they see enhanced towards blemishless perfection, so never really achievable. So have we made progress towards diversity and representation of diversity in the media? If we go on to the next slide, thank you, Meha. Ashley Graham is an interesting American plus-size model. She's featured on the covers of many fashion magazines and journals, and she was the first plus-size model in history to walk down a designer catwalk for Michael Kors in 2017. Spring-summer 2021 saw Ashley Graham on the Fendi runway, and Versace sent 3 plus-size models down the catwalk. However, for his autumn-winter collection, there were no plus-size models represented. It's worth noting that typically model size sample sizes are a 4 to 8 in the UK. Tom Ford is quoted as saying that his models have to be this size or the same size, as it's impractical and costly to cater for diverse ranges. Thank you. And in spring 2020, out of 7,390 model castings, only 86 plus-size models were included on worldwide catwalks, with London casting only 3. So we know that the industry has major steps to take before true diversity can be achieved. And London Fashion Week, for 2 years running now, has seen protests against the lack of plus-size models on the catwalks. And now we move on to this diversity here. Is it glory or glorification? Cosmopolitan magazine had a backlash of criticism when they featured body image activist Tess Holliday on the cover of 2018 October issue. The controversy was sparked between morbid obesity or positive body image. Was it glory in diverse size and shape, or was it glorification of obesity, which is deemed to be unhealthy and dangerous? And according to Murray, actually, the mainstream's acceptable version of a big body or a plus size is just an exaggerated or larger hourglass shape. We can move on. Thank you very much, Meha. Edward Enninful, who is the editor-in-chief of British Vogue, said of this cover in May 2018, "When I say diversity, I want to be clear that it's never just about black and white for me. It's about diversity across the board, whether that's race, size, socio-economic background, religion, or sexuality. That's what I want to celebrate on the cover." Nevertheless, the magazine received mixed reviews, with some readers expressing the opinion that it was forced diversity and a political statement. And one reader commented when looking at the diverse Vogue cover, "This trend of putting your token girls all in the cover at once is desperate." But we can see here that actually Vogue magazine and several other major journals have achieved or have featured a number of diverse models over the past year, with different races, skin tones, and ethnicities featured much more often than they have been in the past. However, despite the fact that the media has included diverse skin tones, particularly in beauty campaigns, and plus size models are also featured more often, in fashion photo shoots, this is not yet common. It is the exception to the rule. Fashion styling and beauty and skincare ad campaigns frequently feature white Western women, and sometimes, more often now, will feature different skin tones. But this is not yet a true representation of diversity. We can move on. Thank you, Meha. Thank you. So now looking at age, or is it ageism? This is interesting, and I would say inappropriate ad campaigns. But the example I've used here is Maison Margiela, with a target audience of 35 to 55 and over. They use these very, very young models for the Mutiny fragrance and their ad campaigns, not at all representative of the target audience. Fashion, styling, beauty, and skincare campaigns, often with older target audiences of 40 plus, use very young models with flawless skin. So what's the message here? It's anti-wrinkle cream you're buying. Do we want to see flawless youth, or do we want to see a real representation of a target consumer? Interestingly, in the United States, DeVoe's fall 2020 collection evidenced diversity of models between the ages of 13 and 82, and varied ethnicities, including a Brazilian model and Afro-American models as well. It was welcomed, and we have increasingly seen, as you can see here, far more older models in some of our leading journals. Mae Musk on the left is 73 and has enjoyed a career as a model from the age of 15. However, she only really became a supermodel and very popular in her late 60s when she embraced her silver hair. And on the right-hand side, we can see Jan de Villeneuve. She's also age 73 and featured on the cover of Harper's Bazaar in 2018. She's enjoyed a resurgence of popularity and walked the runway in London Fashion Week in 2020 to rave reviews. She's not had plastic surgery, and she doesn't hide her beautiful lines and wrinkles. 2017 to 2020 did see an upsurge in the use of older models, both male and female, on the catwalk, particularly in Fashion Week shows. Although magazines feature more older celebrities, this doesn't manifest itself generally for 40 plus target audiences. The media generally seems to prefer youth rather than embracing the beauty of age. So women's body morphology has changed significantly since we first looked at the 1950s. Body shapes have become broader, with the waists larger and larger breasts. This is all generally attributed to birth control pills, hormones in the food chain, and increased consumption of processed foods. The ideal hourglass shape of the 50s was only often achieved by the aid of girdles. Nevertheless, this unrealistic body shape formed an enduring ideal, and today, a fashion dress stand still retains this unrealistic and unrepresentative hourglass shape. In the UK, a size 12 is a standard sample size. However, our national average size for women is a size 16. Interestingly, plus sizes are advertised and started from a size 16. However, runway models and fashion models are still typically a size 4 to 8 and not remotely representative of the larger population. So the media sells and amplifies trends originated by fashion. And as we've seen, many fashion trends produce ideals which are difficult and often impossible to achieve, and which have significant impact on body image, self-esteem, mental and physical health. We've seen increased representation of plus size, skin tone, or ethnicity and older age. However, celebrity culture continues to dominate the media, and diversity remains in the margins rather than the norm. Until our media is representative of the general population, women and men will continue to strive for the current unrealistic idea, whatever the cost to themselves. But the question that's most interesting, I think, is whether reality sells. Can the media sell reality, or would we as a society much rather perpetuate the myth? And that's my question to you. Thank you.
Jane, thank you so much. I mean, these presentations are very important for our younger generation to know. And most of us here who are attending this, except for us from Pearl Academy, most of them are from non-fashion backgrounds. And how fashion and fashion media has played a very important role in sometimes portraying women, misrepresentation of women, and also fashion has played a very important role in bringing and building communities also. So thank you so much, Jane, for this presentation. It's a delight, and thank you. I have your presentation and I will share it with the organizers here so that they can put it up on their platform. Thank you.
You're
this actually, in the absence of our session chair, had to leave in between. I think she has some technical issue, but thank you so much. This brings us to the end of the session today. Firstly, I thank Jane, Dr. Jane, to have waited. It really took long for us to come to the keynote address today. We had some technical issues in between, but thank you for making it here. Mahabanoji, thank you so much for joining us today, taking out time for us, and our chief guest. I think Ma'am Mamta she messaged me that she will have to leave now. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us, and audience, thank you for putting such great comments here. We really enjoyed making this presentation and this panel for all of you. And maybe we should make it face-to-face sometimes in college, or once things are better, Jane, you could travel and we can have a face-to-face session here with all our students and faculty members and GMEC members. Thank you so much. Namaste. Thank you.
I loved the fashion
Mahima, best of luck.
Presentation by Miss Ledberry. It was fantastic. I've never been so interested in fashion as I was by listening to you. Fabulous presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, GMEC, for making this panel.
Thank you, Meha.